Hello and welcome to Recap the podcast with me, Lucy Wheeler. Recap stands for Research in Education, Child Development and Parenting. And our mission is to embrace everyone and make everyone feel at home and part of a supportive community. Here on the podcast, you will find stories from parents, child development professionals, researchers, early childhood educators, and many, many more. So pop on those headphones while you walk the dog, grab a snippet during your lunch break or while your baby sleeps, and enjoy listening to some incredible stories from some truly amazing people. Welcome to Recap. Hello and a huge warm welcome to my guests today. Yes, you heard that right, guests with an S, as today I am bringing you not one but two lovely ladies who I'm super excited to chat to. Mother and daughter duo Laura and Ellie James are here today to chat all things family and neurodiversity. So, before we head into that, I just want to tell you a little more about them. With a passion for Disney and musical theatre, Ellie left her hometown of Weymouth in 2018 to study writing for broadcasting, media and performance. Now, despite her university years being interrupted by the pandemic, she gained a 2-1, which is incredible. She works in a variety of jobs, including working as an assistant gymnastics coach and an NCS assistant leader. She is looking to build her online social media business, but she spends her downtime enjoying creative arts, gaming online with friends, reading and attending musical theatre. And also with us today, her lovely mum, Laura. Now, Laura is married with 2 children, 2 adult children, and lives in the inspirational county of Dorset. A writer with disabilities and chronic health conditions, Laura has 3 novels published and spent 5 years as the Romantic Novelists Association's Industry Awards Organiser. Diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis in her late teens, Laura focused on what she can do rather than what she cannot do, which is an amazing mindset to have. And she doesn't mind one bit that ironing is one of the things that she cannot do. And in her own words, other than arthritis, colitis, fibromyalgia, and osteoporosis, Laura is a beacon of health. So I am so excited to be speaking with you both today. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome to the episode Laura and Ellie. How are you both doing today?
Hi there, Lucy, and thank you. Well, that's great. Thank you ever so much for inviting us as well. We're really looking forward to this.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to me. Welcome to both of you. It's really great to have a mother and daughter team on the podcast because it's going to be really interesting to hear from both of you in terms of perspectives on different topics and things like that. So I'm going to just begin by asking you, Laura, about your journey into parenting. You have 2 beautiful children, Alex and the lovely Ellie, who joins us today. So what was your journey into motherhood like?
Depends, how specific and descriptive would you like me to be?
Maybe not so graphic, but description is fine.
It is interesting, actually, because I've had rheumatoid, say, since my late teens, rheumatoid arthritis. And I was on meds for this. And I was told that I would have to come off certain meds, in order to conceive. And
Right.
Ellie took a year or so, and she arrived. And I have to say that until I'd met my husband, Gary, I was kind of not worried about children, whether I had them or not.
Okay.
And it was something that Gary was very, very keen for. And so I sort of kind of casually sort of thought, okay, then if that's what he wants to do. And then suddenly I've got this 6 pound 11 ounces little baby in my hands, and it was like the best thing I've ever done. And I was immediately, I'd fallen in love with this little thing who's now 6'1", sitting beside me.
Wow.
And kisses me on top of the head, as does Alex, who's 6'4".
Are you tall?
It's not my genes.
I was going to say,
I'm 5'5.5". And just say what, Lucy, they all laugh at the little marks on our door frame where we've measured over the years because they know which are mine.
It's because there's like a foot gap.
Oh.
Mine are the child-sized ones.
That stopped growing now.
Yeah, I've actually lost half an inch, so yeah, I'm going down now. So yeah, and that was, I was considered a geriatric mother then because I think, what was I, 33? Yeah, 33 when Ellie was born. And at about 18 months, we'd always said we'd like to have 2 children if we could. And we started trying for a second child, and it just wasn't happening, as in I wasn't falling pregnant. Everything else was happening. So share that with you. I come to the conclusion that the only thing that had changed in me was I was a year and a half or so older, which at that age probably wasn't going to make too much of a difference in terms of fertility.
Yeah.
But I'd been put on different anti-inflammatories because I'd developed an intolerance to the ones that I had previously come off whilst we were pregnant and what have you. And so they'd put me on a different type of anti-inflammatory. And I remember going to my rheumatology consultant and saying, I think it's this. And he said, no, it's not. And then I ended up going to the fertility clinic. That's something to write about, isn't it? where they said, no, it's not. And then my lovely stepdad, he's no longer with us. He's been gone a long, long time, but he lived next door. And he said he'd found a very small, kind of like a review, a medical review online that had taken place in Canada. It was only about 300 subjects, but they found that some anti-inflammatories were causing infertility.
Wow.
And he said, the thing is, in this country, it's such a small number of the study that they wouldn't take any notice of it.
Yeah.
But I took that and ran with it, and I eventually worked out that it was the I'd been right all along.
Wow.
But the reason was these anti-inflammatories were known as COX-2 inhibitors. So I then had to find out what COX-2 is.
Yeah.
And if I remember rightly, it's an enzyme that helps something in your system go pop in order for you to conceive.
Okay.
It was actually inhibiting that popping that was required. Probably not the most scientific.
I was going to say, is that the technical term?
The popping. But yeah, so
interesting.
I tracked that. And so I took myself off the anti-inflammatories. And within a matter of weeks, I'd fallen pregnant. We lost that one, which we think was probably the residual medicine inside.
Right, okay.
That was in the October. And then the following April, I was expecting again. Had some trouble at the start of this, but by the following January, even though it was meant to be born on Christmas Day, on January the 4th, great big, huge rugby ball of a child was born, sort of £9.10. I say born, they were, but I have the smile, the cesarean smile from both children.
Yeah.
Because they were both kind of laid back in their hammocks, thinking this is comfy, I'm going to be
just
briefed.
chilling. Yeah.
Nothing much changes.
I was going to
really.
say, are they both still as laid back?
Well, this is very interesting because Ellie was actually 3.5 weeks early, but she was an extremely placid child, and I used to joke that if I'd had Alex first, I might not have had any more. As gorgeous as he was, but we used to call him the little grabbit gnome. He was into everything.
Oh, really?
He was very angry.
You have a child harness.
My husband Gary had to adapt a child harness that I could use because of my rheumatoid. It affects my hands and my wrists and things. I couldn't undo them, so he adapted a child harness because Alex was a runner,
right?
And I can't run either. And things like this. So yeah, but he's 6'4". He's over at Aberystwyth Uni studying, which is where his sister went as well. But he's studying sport and exercise science.
Okay.
He wants to become a physio.
Okay.
Which he grew up with his nan next door, who also had rheumatoid. He's grown up obviously in this household.
Oh, okay.
And he's very chill and laid back, isn't he?
Yeah.
And the tallest one in the family, which he's delighted about.
You got to take these wins.
So it was interesting. Yeah, and I sort of look back and I wonder whether this placidity, if that's such a word, Ellie was so placid, whether there was something more to it than I realised at the time. But there you go. I've got these two wonderful, caring children that make me laugh and also let me join in with their online gaming every now and then.
Which is always a bonus.
What more can I ask for?
That is amazing that you kind of thought that you pinpointed something that was potentially going wrong and you took it into your own hands to go into it and have a look at it yourself. That takes a lot of courage as a parent, I think.
To be honest, I got a bit sick of all the probes in the fertility clinic.
Fair enough, yeah.
I mean, when you get to that point, there is nothing. Yeah. We've discovered, I think, over the years, haven't we, Ellie, that I don't really possess an embarrassment gene. I mean, I will get up. I'll get up on stage and sing and things like that. But, you do get to a point, especially with that, gynecological thing, that you just can't afford to be embarrassed. You just have to, I was going to say lie back and think of England, but you kind of get the idea.
I mean, you do lie back on many of the things that they need to do anyway, don't you? I mean, it can be quite invasive, can't it? That whole process of going through and ruling things out and test after test and that. It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was on, I think it's called Clomid, if I remember rightly, because Alex is 19 now, so it was a long time ago. So I was on Clomid, and interestingly for us, it was there was one last treatment, one last actual tablet, and we'd got one last pregnancy test, and we'd actually started looking at adopting.
Wow.
And we'd had a couple of meetings about adopting. And one of my friends said to me, at the point you start looking at adoption, you'll probably fall pregnant. And that's exactly what happened.
You know what? It's so funny that you say that, because obviously you and I, we know each other for quite a few years now. So you know some of my backstory anyway. But it's so funny that you say that about the Clomid, because years and years ago, I went through a similar sort of thing where I was struggling to conceive after having my daughter. We wanted to have a second baby and I just couldn't conceive. And I went through some of the initial testings and they put me on Clomid, and I went through months and months of it and it just wasn't working for me. And I got down to the last tablet, the last cycle of it, and I was like, do you know what, it's not working. And one of my friends at the time, she was like, oh, we're really struggling. I was like, take this. And I gave her my last one. She fell pregnant.
Wow.
And I was like, was that the beacon one? But I'm very much, I do believe in everything happening for a reason. That's my motto in life. I stand by that. So I just believe that, I haven't gone on to have any more children. I've just got the one now. But subsequently, that relationship broke down and everything. So, in a way, it's kind of good that I didn't have another child. And I feel like it was, fate's way of saying that it wasn't meant to happen for me. But it's so funny that you say about the last tablet in the cycle, and then that was the one that I'd kind of passed on. I'm not advocating passing on medication to other people. I should add on it as well. But yeah, that's so funny how that happens. It's really empowering to hear when parents take into your own hand when something's not happening and you're relying on medical professionals and sometimes it's just not happening, and then you go, right, I'm going to look into this. And ultimately it paid off and you did your research and found a way through it.
I guess my stepdad must have been looking it up. He must have been researching it himself, and he just passed me this gem, and I thought, well, let's follow this. And I do wonder if it goes back to some of my I'm an ex-claims assessor for the Prudential, so I would always be looking for evidence and I'd always be trying to follow things through. So I wonder whether some of it goes back to that. But also I rely very much on my gut instinct, and if something feels right or doesn't feel right, I tend to go with my gut instinct. But you're also mentioning things maybe happening for a reason. At that time, I'd met and made friends with people through Baby Club, going to a baby club with Ellie. And by 2 years, a lot of people were having that sort of typical 2-year gap where they then have their second child. There's quite often a 2-year gap.
Yeah.
And of course it wasn't happening for me. And so between Ellie and Alex, there's 4.5 to 5 years age gap. But actually, most of my friends had said to me they think that's worked out really well because they struggled and they were able-bodied. They struggled with that age gap, having 2 youngsters, that age gap. Whereas by the time Alex was born, Ellie was just about going to school, but she was also very keen to be involved. So as you say, who knows?
Yeah.
It was just meant to be.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that. So, Ellie, what's Laura like as a mum? What would you say has been some of the memorable moments that stick in your mind in terms of your relationship? Because you're 23 now, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're an adult now yourself. So what's your relationship been like with your mum?
We've always been exceptionally close, and a lot of things we do together. So we're up and down, we'll go to theatre together. But some I think the formative moments and things that stick with me, I was thinking about this earlier, it was like some nights when we're not really doing anything. Like we sat down just a few years ago and it must have been 3 or 4 hours we were playing a game together, and we just had to stop because we were in complete fits because neither of us were taking it seriously. And I think being able to be that relaxed and being able to just laugh at the most stupid things, but then being able to also sit down and come say, hey, I've had a really bad day, or I don't know what this person means, they've messaged me this, they've said this, it sounds like this, is this me misinterpreting it, is this me thinking a little bit too literally, or do they actually mean it in the way it's come across? And being able to have that vulnerability, I think it's been really nice, but it's also been really important.
Yeah, that's really nice actually that you've touched upon that, because I think that's a really important part, as you say, of a relationship between a mother and a daughter. And you've both actually had a bit of a journey over the recent years in terms of embarking on a diagnosis pathway, neurodivergent diagnosis pathway. And Ellie, you were diagnosed in 2023 with autism, is that right?
Yeah, June last year.
So, and obviously we've just said you're 23, so it's quite a late diagnosis for somebody to go through. So I'm just interested a little bit about, with both of you, Ellie, your journey through that, and obviously Laura, how that's from a parental perspective. I mean, how has that whole process been for the pair of you?
So I was told that I'm considered young for having a female diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the young end of it, which was wild to me because I've got a few other friends that were diagnosed, and all of them when they were younger because they saw it presents differently in boys, and they was taught it in primary school for them. So for there to be 14 years difference between them getting their diagnosis and me getting mine, but for me to be considered young,
that's crazy.
I think it says a lot about when they started to pick up on it.
Yeah.
Being, girls being able to actually be autistic. But for me, what started it all was I'd gone in for counselling for something else entirely, and the last thing was said to me was, by the way, you're showing signs of autistic traits we see in girls. We'll book you in for your first counselling appointment in January.
Oh, by the way.
So I went, yeah.
Yes, poor Ellie, didn't you? You came out of your session, we were in the car park waiting for her, and we said, we're a bit nervous, you okay? What?
Yeah, so over Christmas, it was just, at that point, constantly at the front of my mind. Went to my first counselling session, said, I was told this. Can we just look into it so I can get a no and then just move on so it's not bugging me anymore?
Yeah.
The no didn't happen, and 8 months later I got a letter saying, yeah, you are. I mean, I'm definitely better off for it, and other things make a lot more sense now, but it all started with just one person sort of going, we've seen this, and then it just continually bugging me. And as it stands, I spoke to some of my diagnosed friends, and they ran me through some things, and one of them actually said, yeah, no, I've thought about this for the last 4 years, and we've only known each other 4 years.
Wow.
But they just didn't want to say anything because they didn't know how I was going to react to it.
Yeah.
So sort of having that almost peer review was validating in and of itself, and while I had to wait for the actual diagnosis to come through.
Yeah, wow.
The irony there, the little thing is that Ellie had this report for about a month before she realised it was actually the report that was the diagnosis. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know, like a mirror and mirror kind of effect going on there. And we were sort of waiting, and then she said, "Oh, hang on, it was the the report from the psychiatrist, and things." And
it's crazy. So it came off of the back of the counselling that you were already having. So did you have to wait very long between? Did you have to go for further assessment, or did they just kind of assess what they already knew from your counselling?
I got lucky with the timings of mine. I had a few weeks counselling whilst we were also looking into this. I got referred to a psychiatrist and went through all the normal steps. And where it would normally take a couple of years, I just got exceptionally lucky with if I recall correctly, just taken on a load of new psychiatrists.
Right.
So they were able to get through profiles a lot faster than previously. So for mine to actually come through in eight months compared to 2-3 years was exceptional stroke of luck.
From a standing start as well, because we had no idea, because Ellie is Ellie.
Yeah.
I have thought, what did I miss? How did I miss it? Why did I miss it? And then I think, well, because Ellie is Ellie. Yeah. She was our first child, and Ellie is Ellie. Ellie is unique.
Yeah.
Ellie makes me laugh. Ellie is intelligent and eloquent, but also needs micromanaging, which could drive me around the twist, but now I know why.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely it, isn't it? Because if that's all you've ever known, and that what you're used to in terms of her behaviours, characteristics, personality traits, these are all, like you say, this is who she is. So for somebody to then come along and say, actually, this might be indicative of something else, I can imagine that was quite a moment for both of you to kind of go, oh, okay, hang on a minute then, and kind of question. Did you find yourself reflecting back to childhood and going, oh, well, was this a sign of this, and so on like that?
I know I did. I mean, I spoke with the psychiatrist. I think that's part of their diagnosis system, so that I could give input from Ellie's younger years.
Oh, yeah.
So sort of primary school and stuff like
and
that.
Also more objectively as well.
And potentially, more objectively. And that in itself, I don't know how long I was on the phone to him for, an hour, 90 minutes, something like that. But I found that really emotional. Yeah. And I had him sort of saying, it's okay. There's absolutely no reason to feel guilty. He said, it's not, I'm thinking, and at the same time, then I'm feeling guilty for feeling guilty because it wasn't about me. It's about Ellie. Yeah. And as we're talking and voicing it, I'm following a statement up immediately with, oh, yeah, now that makes sense, to things like plushies. For example, I have tried and failed to free the plushies from Ellie's room, and those that we finally did manage to get out are in a box in the loft because she will not let them go.
Yeah,
I know. I'm quite sentimental about things, but there's a point. Alex isn't sentimental at all. You give him a birthday card one day, it's if he's done with it, it's done and thrown away. Nothing wrong with that. That's how he is.
No, but I was going through my cards the other day and I found a birthday card from my second birthday. That someone had sent me that I've still got. That's over 20 odd years ago.
Yeah, it's just, and I just, at the time, I just thought, oh gosh, okay, that's how it is. But this turns out to be, I don't know, what do we do?
The extreme sentiment is part of it.
Okay.
So and having that, particular connection to things, particularly plushies, inanimate objects. It's really strange, because I also know that logically it's not something to be sentimental about, but that connection has sort of been built over however many years, and some of those plushies date back to when I was a baby. And it's conversations I've had with some of my other friends as well. They are very similar, and it's a shared experience between all of us. And we all know that it shouldn't make sense, and to someone else it probably doesn't make sense, but to us it does, and you can't explain it, but it's an intrinsic part of who we are.
It was a real epiphany, and different things like the tidiness of Eleanor's room. Ellie knows where everything is. I can see where everything is when I walk in, but we quickly, quite a few years ago, said, no, that's your room. But we have tried to sort of say, can you please create some order? Can you please, but now we understand that that's just not how Ellie's brain operates. I like things back in their place. I like to know where I left them. And I think some of that for me stems from the fact that I'm trying to make my physical life easier because of my rheumatoid and my aches and pains and whatnot. But I didn't understand that wasn't how it worked with Ellie. I naturally assumed it was just she couldn't be bothered, or that she had other things to do. And it's not. It's down to things like executive dysfunction.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I don't like my room being messy, but if it gets to that point, then there's too much for me to do anything about it. And sometimes I will just turn around and look at it and be like, I will actively decide that I'm going to tidy my room, or I'm going to sort this out and sort that out. And then something else goes, now that you've decided you wanted to, you're not.
It
feels physically difficult to get up sometimes, like something's physically stopping me, and it's indescribable again, because none of it makes sense, and it's a full-on argument in your own head sometimes, because as much as you want to do something else is physically stopping you, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, and this is a thing. I mean, with hidden disabilities, to some extent mine are, because unless you get up close, you can't see they've got missing ulnar heads and scars and fused joints and all this kind of thing. But when it's in your brain, you can't see it. And I've tried sort of equating as much as I can to how I would be affected if it was a physical disability. So, and I've reached the conclusion that I probably will never really fully understand how Ellie feels, but I totally accept it, and I think that's a good way to go. And how can I possibly understand it, because I don't believe in myself that I am autistic. We laugh that I have a couple of traits, but then I think every personality has different traits, but we laughed, didn't we? This is one of those times we were talking about earlier, when we were in the car coming back from probably being to see a bit of musical theatre in London, and you decided to run me through one of the tests, didn't you?
One of the ones I was sent.
Okay.
One of the ones that Ellie was sent to see, autistic traits and this kind of thing. And she, at the end of it, she just started laughing. And I said, "What?" She said, "Mum, you're one of the least autistic persons I know."
Oh, really?
She just come out with a score of 6 or something. Yeah, score of 6.
Wow.
But the threshold on that test was 60 or 70.
Oh, wow. So really low.
60 or 70.
Just for perspective there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. I'm not quite sure what that makes me, but
But that's one of the things I had to deal with on the tail end of the diagnosis, was dealing with imposter syndrome, because there was nothing physical. And nothing inherently with me had changed.
Yeah.
I just continued acting the same way that I always have, because I've always been autistic. I just didn't know for the past 23 years. Wow. And a lot of it was going oh, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to have these accommodations? It was yes, because I need them. I just had to battle with a couple of months compared to 23 years and sorting that out, and that took a good 4 or 5 months of getting used to before I could actually be comfortable with it.
That is a fascinating insight into it, actually, and I didn't even consider the thought of somebody, and I like how you've referred to it as imposter syndrome, how somebody kind of comes to terms with the fact that they're being told that you have this condition, but you feel no different because you are just you. And that is a fascinating insight, actually. And I mean, I know that you both know as well. Gracie, my daughter, went through the process and got, I mean, I say a late diagnosis, obviously not as late as yours. She got diagnosed when she was 16. And we felt like that was a late diagnosis. And I remember when we had a video call with her paediatrician when we got our official diagnosis. And I remember before the call, she was very much like, I just want to know, I just need, so that I know in my head, I just want to know and understand so I can move on. And she was very confident about it. And she's a very confident young person. And then we had the call, and in the middle of the call, while the paediatrician had confirmed it and then carried on talking, she just burst into tears. And I was like, what's the matter? And she just got so overwhelmed because she was like, I don't understand, like, it's same as you, like, I don't feel any different. This is, and to be told, because she was told that because she's got ADHD and high functioning autism and social anxiety and sensory processing, so she had like a few things, and she just found it completely overwhelming being told all of these things, even though we'd been kind of saying in our conversations, and we'd got our heads around the fact that we knew that this diagnosis was coming after the assessment and everything. But I don't think anything could have prepared her for that moment when a professional turned around and said, yes, this is what you've got. And after that, I kind of had to say to the paediatrician, can we do a kind of a follow-up call, or can you follow up with a letter, because she's not taking anything in right now because she's just overwhelmed by the whole thing.
And interesting from there is, of course, you were there with Gracie because she was considered a minor, whereas Ellie did this on her own. But that was really difficult because I wanted to be there for her, but I didn't want to interfere or appear nosy. But again, that's probably two very different processes that we've been through as families.
What was slightly different about mine as well is I was away in London for a few days in April and had one of my counselling appointments, and I was told there and then that it's very much looking like your diagnosis is going to come back positive. It's pretty much guaranteed. We're just waiting on the formalities. So start living as if you have been diagnosed. So I had 3 months where I was unofficially professionally diagnosed to kind of adjust to that, and having in the back of my head being able to say I'm autistic. And then when the letter actually came through in June, and then when I actually realised that I was officially diagnosed in July, I could categorically state I am autistic, this is what I need, this is how I'm going to continue to act, nothing has changed. And it was overwhelming, because every single depiction you see, I think, in the media growing up, it's not necessarily positive. You see very extreme depictions, and it's very, very binary. It's one way or the other. They're either so low support that they're kind of ignored, or they're so high support that you look at it and it feels like it's catastrophized a bit. And yes, there are people that need that much support, but for the people that are lower support, you kind of feel as if it's that I'm not as bad as it should be. I'm not as overwhelmed as I seem. Yeah, I should be overwhelmed all the time. I should be having meltdowns every day, and that's not the case. And it took a while to come to terms with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's the little things actually that people live with. So yeah, we might not be having shutdowns and meltdowns. I have witnessed a number of them, and some of them have cost Ellie money because she was trying to learn to drive and she couldn't get off the sofa. That when we thought at that time it was just really crippling anxiety as an individual symptom, and there were numbers of driving lessons that she just couldn't go to, and that was just money, in my eyes at that point, just down the drain. I didn't understand why. Now we understand why, and the idea of driving a manual car just blew your brain out, didn't it? It's just too much to comprehend, and clearly Ellie is intelligent, as I said before, and eloquent, and was an early reader and spoke really well as a youngster, but these are actually indicators towards the diagnosis, and that's where I think it varies from diagnoses for males. And I think today we need to be more forward thinking. That I think people are still associating male traits of autism and not seeing that displayed in females.
Must mean they don't have it.
Exactly. And it's wrong. It's wrong.
Yeah. It's definitely growing in the research now, the acknowledgement of how females present differently to males when it comes to autistic traits. And yes, this kind of being very highly academic, it can easily mask a lot of things, can't it? And I mean, Gracie was the same. She was incredibly academic at school and did very well, and that was one of her biggest challenges at school, was that she would be in class and she would super fast through the work to a really high standard, and within like 10-15 minutes she'd done, and they would start giving her like extensions. Okay, I'm done, what's next? Because she needed that constant, I think teamed with the ADHD, she needed that constant input of work. And we got to the point in a mainstream school where they kind of said, we've got no more work for you, just need to sit and wait. And that, I mean, that's awful for her to have to do, because she doesn't sit and wait for anything. Like, she is 100 miles an hour 24/7. So she really struggled in the sense of she worked too fast at school. And so we were quite fortunate in the pandemic happened when she was in year 8, so she did some homeschooling, and she absolutely thrived because she could work at her own pace, and she whizzed through what she needed to do, and then she could move on to something else. So her attention was kept going here, there, everywhere, and that's how she works best. So that kind of spurred on our decision when we ended up kind of deregistering from school and going down the home ed route that we did. But I even spoke to somebody quite recently, actually, who also said the same about somebody that they knew, and their son was incredibly bright, and so the school kept saying, "What? But he's fine. He's achieving. He's getting really high grades. He's not struggling at all." And then when he was 16, he got his diagnosis 2 months or something before his GCSEs, and they were like, "Right, what can you put in place this short notice before the GCSE exam to support him?" But because he was achieving so highly, the school just kept saying, "He's fine. He's achieving, academically, he's doing fine. He's not struggling." And actually he was struggling, but he was masking.
Yes.
So I think it's...
I feel quite strongly about this point, but I won't go into that right now. But yeah, the schools, they weren't looking at it when Ellie was at primary school in females.
Yeah.
It wasn't really on the radar. And even at university, when Aberystwyth have been really good, because Ellie also has epilepsy, which she was diagnosed with when she was 12, which can be linked. Autism and epilepsy can be linked.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I couldn't tell you why. I just know that they are. And we don't know anybody in our family with epilepsy. That was a real curveball, real bolt out of the blue. And that happened the same year as we lost your gran, didn't it? A few months on from losing my mum. This diagnosis, it turns out that Ellie had absent seizures probably for at least 2 years at that point. We just thought she was tuning out, zoning out. But yeah, they're quite often are linked. Can't remember which way around it is. I was reading it the other day as well. But yeah, they can be linked. And that wasn't picked up on at a primary school. And we had to make sure we told every single teacher at secondary school. And Ellie's tutor was fantastic and really fought her corner. God rest her, because she's no longer with us either. And there was no allowance made for these absent seizures, where Ellie would just lose anything between sort of 5 to 20, 30 seconds sometimes. And these sort of absent seizures, you'd carry on doing stuff. So she could be outside walking, she'd walk across the road and know nothing about it, and know nothing. And I remember saying to her, "Where did you go?" And she said, "What do you mean, where did I go?" But and she say it makes, she didn't used to understand how she could be sitting and watching TV, and then she'd miss a chunk, and it'd come back, and she'd just think, "Not sure what happened there." She'd had an absent seizure, But and then she has had tonic-clonic since then as well. At the moment, she had 8 years seizure-free, and then had a massive breakthrough in March 2022. And I thought you were dying, and you scared the living daylights out of me, child. Oh my God.
It's keeping you on your toes.
Oh, I couldn't talk about it for a long time after without choking up. I really thought there was just me in the house with her. Gary had actually gone away that morning with his dad. And, Ellie's 6'1", I'm not. And I just heard, anyway, let's not go there.
I think what was interesting about that afterwards, I think it's fairly easy for me to talk about it because I have to be quite pragmatic about the reality of things. And we found out afterwards that my medication was too low for my age, my height, and my build. It was for that of your average 14-year-old, and I was 20. I was 22. 21, about to turn 22.
Wow.
And the last time it had been looked at was just before I went to uni, so just after I turned 18. And because I hadn't had any problems, they said, "You're fine on the one you're on." And actually what happened afterwards is I'd gone to tell a couple of the friends that I'd worked with over Christmas, because I'd only been out of that job a couple of months, it was only temporary. And one of them in there, neither of them medically qualified, one of them went, "That sounds like you're on a child's dose. That sounds way too low for you." Went to my neurology appointment, and they said, "Someone's left you on a child's dose. Wow. That's not enough." So since then, it's been upped, and I'm at the correct dose now. But it was a long time coming.
No, it was the same consultant. So he saw her before she went off to uni, because that was like the child services hand over to the adult services, and she was going off to uni. And so at that point, he saw what medication and what dosage she was on at 18 years old, and he did nothing to change it. And then when he had I think it was a video call with him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He said something along the lines, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellie, but something along the lines of, "I'm surprised you've gone that far without a seizure." Yeah. I said, I wish I'd been in that room, because, Mother Bear would have come out growling then. I thought, an absolute cheek. You're the last person to have seen her. You had that within your power to increase her dosage, and you didn't. We've now had this massive, two tonic clonics back to back. It was just horrendous. And he says, "Oh, I'm surprised you hadn't had it sooner, and you're on a low dose."
Wow.
So anyway, that got upped, and touch wood, we're back on a
And I think the thing about that now is I'm a lot more acutely aware of the medication that I'm on, and that just because it's working doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. Just because it worked for that long didn't mean it was always going to work. And now this one's actually suited to me being as tall as I am and 10 years older than the last time it was adjusted. And I'm aware now that if I think it needs to be changed again, I should push for that, and I should stand up and advocate for myself.
Yes. So you should, and I agree. If you would or not, I don't know, because of course what we've learned over the last few months, because things like meds is not a bone of contention, but it's one of those things, isn't it, where you have to take them twice a day, within a specific
11 to 13 hours
time span, for them to work. And if you mess that up, there's every possibility you're going to have a seizure. And I really, from my own heart, I don't think I could go through that again. It's just I feel for people who don't have it under control or haven't found the right meds. It's just awful. But I don't know about you, Lucy, but there's quite a bit of prompting that goes on in this house. and have you had your pills? And you get this yes, and then you hear the pill rattling, and you think, okay, okay.
Grace is normally quite good because she's on a medication at the moment for her ADHD, although I think she's leaning more towards coming off it now. But she can go either way. She can be really, really, and I think this is the thing, because she has two conditions. She's got the autism and she's got ADHD, and some of the characteristics conflict between one another. So how she behaves with one side, sometimes a bit like you were saying, Ellie, earlier about having that inner battle in your brain. She has that all the time of various different things. Like, she's very organized and very particular and very tidy, but can be super messy sometimes. And they really kind of conflict. And the same with like the medication. Some days she can be super on it and really organized and everything is laid out and she knows exactly and she's like on the ball. And then other days she's forgetting things left, right and center. And I can tell on those days because I'll go to her, have you had your meds? And she's like, oh, no, I haven't. I'm like, I can tell because you are all over the place. And she'll like forget one thing after another. And we had a day where she'd got up late, which knocks her out of sync completely. If she doesn't get up when she plans to get up, it completely throws her for like the whole day. But she'd got up late and then I'd dropped her off at the gym and then she'd message me and said, oh, I've forgotten to pack this in my work bag because I pick her up from the gym and then take her to work. And I was like, okay, I'll put it in. And then I got another message, I forgot to make my lunch this morning. I was like, okay, I'll put it in your bag. And she's like, can you bring me an apple for after the gym because I didn't pack anything for breakfast? Okay. And then I picked her up from the gym, took her to work, dropped her off at work. And as we got to work, she went, I haven't taken my meds. I need to take my meds. And I was like, I can tell. So I was like, right, go into work. I'll go home and get your meds. And then I'll ring you when I'm outside and you can run out and get them. I start driving away and my phone starts ringing. And it's a number I don't know. And I answer. She's like, it's Gracie. I'm on so-and-so's phone at work. And then I look down in the centre console and her phone's sitting there. And she's like, I've left my phone in the car. It's like, for goodness sake, you are having one of those days. So I was like, it's fine. I'll get your meds. And then when you can come out and get your meds, you can have your phone as well. But because she'd got up in the morning late, it knocked everything out of sync because she's super organised and regimented. But if one thing knocks out, she struggles to kind of get back on track. So it turns into like a whole day. I mean, Ellie, I don't know about you. What kind of like challenges day to day do you have to kind of learn to manage? And can you manage them?
I have quite a bit of a routine in the morning. Like, not so much. I do tend to wake up roughly the same time every day. But regardless what time I wake up, it's the same sort of give myself some time to wake up, and then it's going to take me this long to get up, and I do things in the order so that I don't forget anything. But a lot of the time it's just basic things like I'll forget to eat because I'll become too concentrated on something. I won't realise necessarily that I need the toilet and sometimes it's pointed out to me, it's like, have you actually like looked after yourself today? And when I start thinking about it, it's no, I haven't eaten, I haven't had anything to drink because I've been so focused on something else that I forget and I don't register that I actually need to do these things. Even like my friends, and this happened last night, I had eaten lunch a little bit later, so I wasn't particularly hungry around the normal time you'd sort of eat tea. And up until the point I'd eaten, periodically I was being asked, right, do you need something to eat now? Do you need something to eat now? And there's absolutely nothing malicious behind it. It's genuinely, they know that if they don't ask, I won't eat because I will forget. I think that's one of the biggest things, just forgetting basic
self-care.
Yeah. I mean, I rarely see Ellie till at least midday. She's not currently working. That in itself is an issue, isn't it, with people making certain demands that just aren't possible to,
or accommodations
aren't being made. Yeah, you had an interview for a job a few months back. Actually, in that morning, there had been a meltdown because Ellie didn't know what to wear. And when I said, well, it's an interview for this particular sort of establishment, I would suggest this, this, and this. And you tried it on. It wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't right. It didn't feel right to Ellie. We'd had the diagnosis, hadn't we, at this point? And it resulted in a meltdown, which at this point I'm thinking, we've got to get you to the interview on time. And, and I'm trying not to put the pressure on Ellie. And so in the end, she chose what is fairly standard for her, really, which is kind of like a comfy t-shirt, some of which of them can be quite smart, and tidier leggings.
Which I'd also had a job similar to the one I was going to interview for, where that was what I was told to wear, so it wasn't entirely alien to me, because it was okay in this other setting with the same job, different place. Then I had that, whether this was misguided or not, I had that. It was fine here, so it's at least I can reason it if they ask.
But at the interview, the top boss person said something like, "Is that what you would wear?"
She went, "Now, are you dressed because that's what you would wear, or are you dressed because it's autism and you have sensory difficulties? Because just to let you know, if you get the job, you wouldn't be able to wear that."
No.
And I did have to explain to her that the reason I was wearing trainers that day was because a couple of days prior I had done my ankle in and couldn't wear the boots that I would normally wear.
They weren't scruffy trainers. They were really smart, like black ones.
That one I can explain. That one wouldn't be the case. That's just because I can't walk in my normal smart boots at the moment. But yes, the rest of it is dressed because I tried smarter clothes and I pretty much physically kicked them off because I couldn't stand them. And I pretty much got told, well, the two options you have if you were offered the job are deal with it or don't take the job.
That's awful.
And guess what?
She didn't take the job.
So Ellie was offered the job, but particular experience. So, I was sitting in the car park waiting for her to come out, and I'm thinking, well, she's been gone over an hour. This is a good sign. Came out, instant meltdown, and it was horrible. And this person said that, and even if I won't be offered the job because I just didn't do well, and because it was a teaching assistant and a little micro teaching, and she'd created. In fact, Lucy, this is the job. Yes, you're very helpful in sending some ideas as to what Ellie could use as resources, and they went down really well. But Ellie couldn't see it. She couldn't see it at the time because she came out of there. And
definitely, that's an awful situation to be in, and to have that sort of comment said to you when you're already probably very anxious about going in for the interview anyway. But I guess they showed their hand from the offset that they actually weren't going to be very accommodating. So even if you had accepted, I mean, great job that they offered it to you. You clearly had a lot to offer for them. So that's an amazing achievement to acknowledge here. But good for you for not accepting it, because it doesn't sound like it would have been a very healthy workplace to have worked in for someone who needs to be understood. And they didn't sound very understanding at all.
And they have their own. It used to be called, the Asperger's unit. I don't know what it would be called now, but
it was the SEN base.
Yeah, I mean, they're not
ASC base.
They're not inexperienced in this. It's been there for years and years and years. Yeah. But anyway, that's some of the barriers that you come up against.
Yeah, and I've had to sort of learn to put myself first, I think. I mean, if it takes a little bit longer to find a job that I can do, but I'm going to be able to maintain, then it's going to take that little bit longer rather than hopping from job to job because I can't physically cope. So I got lucky with one of my jobs. This is the job I had pre-seizure. It was the most accommodating place I've ever worked. Even down to my boss at the time then, he knew that I wasn't going to ask to go home if I didn't feel well.
Right. Because
I had it in my head that I need to stick out the whole shift, I need to work. So he would say that if you don't look well, you look like you're about to pass out. If you don't ring your mum to come get you, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But would always also finish that conversation with, right, and I'll see you whenever my next shift was, to let me know that I definitely was going to be able to come back for the next shift, because I was so in my own head at the time about if I had to keep going home because I wasn't feeling well or I wasn't coping, then I was going to lose my job. So to just even have that verbal confirmation of, well, you're going to be back on Monday was helpful. And then they were also just a lovely bunch of people as well, and I'm still friends with them.
Yeah, and we said this was pre-diagnosis, so we just were still thinking it was this anxiety which we believed had come as a result of some bullying from school.
Right.
And it was quite horrible and quite extreme and upsetting, wasn't it, at the time? And for that reason, Ellie decided, was it last year, that it was time to kind of face that head on, because she felt it was stopping her going out and socializing and you know, and things like that. Turns out it wasn't anxiety, it's autism.
Yeah.
You know, but even at university, and I'm still livid, but Ellie's told me to let it go, which sometimes, you know, when it's your child, it's really difficult.
It's hard as a parent to let things go, isn't it?
You still want to go
Yeah.
into bat for them and into, you know, fight for them. But she had completed, as she does, studiously completed her work, which you then had to present, didn't you, to the group. And we, between Gary and I, we had so many messages and texts from Ellie stressing, for want of a better word, over this, that I can't do it. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I don't know what to do, you know. And we sort of coached her through it, and you wrote an email to the tutor. Is that the right word? Lecturer, tutor. Got in touch with the student support to say, look, I can't do this. I'm beside myself. You know, again, we're thinking this is this crippling anxiety, which it was, but we now know why. And anyway, she couldn't do it. She couldn't actually physically speak to the group. She asked if she could speak to a smaller group. He didn't allow it, and he scored a 0.
No.
So the whole thing behind that.
And I want to still go back and
I want to go there and say something.
That morning I'd had a group presentation for another seminar, and it was one of those things that you think it's the sort of story you'd read everywhere where one person's pulling their weight and the other person isn't showing up. That's what happened. I had done everything, spoken to my lecturer and said, right, this is the case. They've not shown up. It's the day before. If they don't show up to the seminar, I can't do this by myself because I'm going to freak out and not be able to say anything. And this lecturer is so lovely. She said, right, well, then the friend that I have in that seminar group can be the student witness, and I'll just do it after the seminar to just the tutor and my friend.
Brilliant. Yeah.
As it stands, he did show up and we were absolutely fine. But the duality of that compared to then my last seminar of the day, where I was told either I get over it and present it or I fail that module. So the friend I was with, we shared all the same modules, so we were with each other that entire day. She was losing her voice at the beginning of that day.
Oh no.
And by 4:00, so the 4 to 5 lecture, she'd gone to the doctors and got a note that said they recommend that she doesn't speak. She'd completely lost her voice throughout the day as well. So she took it to the tutor, and she was told, well, it doesn't explicitly say you shouldn't speak. It says we recommend you don't, so you should still do the presentation. She physically couldn't actually talk.
She had laryngitis, I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah.
So we both failed that module, and that was that was where the bar was. I knew that afternoon that there was a good chance that if she wasn't going to be able to have any adjustments made for physically not being able to talk, then I wasn't going to have any adjustments made for something that couldn't be seen and couldn't be proven. I ended up going to student support, and they actually told me, don't go to the lectures anymore. It's causing you so much stress, so much anxiety. We are telling you as disability student support to not attend these seminars anymore. It was only a few weeks until the end of the semester, so I wasn't missing too much, and where seminars are consolidating knowledge rather than learning anything new, it wasn't too detrimental, aside from the fact that I missed out on 20 marks, ultimately because it was first year. For my course, it only counted towards getting into second year, so it wasn't too much of a problem.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so I work in a university, and I've also been part of a research study that looked at autistic university students' experiences of being in a university as well. And what you're talking about, kind of those reasonable adjustments that should be made for students that need them. And obviously that other lecturer that you were talking about who said, you can do it in front of this one other person, that reasonable adjustment was made, which is exactly what should happen. But that other person that really had no inclination of being helpful at all. And it's so damaging to students who, are incredibly bright and have a lot of value to add to the seminars, but just need a few slight adjustments made to enable, so that you can participate in a way that you feel comfortable. And I imagine, that must seriously taint the university experience. I mean, I was going to ask you about university as well, because obviously you did your degree on writing for broadcasting, media and performance, which sounds super interesting, which is great. But you actually did it through the pandemic as well, which I imagine just threw in a whole bunch of more challenges for you. I mean, what was it like trying to navigate, being a university student, but also trying to navigate the pandemic with it as well? Was that a lot more difficult in terms of the kind of challenges that you have to deal with?
I think I got quite lucky in that I got the full first year and half of second year to actually experience uni as is. And when I did come home, because our entire flat decided very quickly that we were all going to go home pretty much within 2 days. We'd all moved out because we didn't like the implications of what we were seeing. We didn't want to be that far away from our families.
Yeah.
So all of them that could drive went home fairly quickly. I messaged our family group chat, said that I want to come home now, because one of my flatmates was stressing over it, and if she was panicking over something, it was something to be taken seriously.
Oh, okay.
So I was home the day after, and kudos to my uni, they were on it really quickly. They figured out how they were going to do online lectures really quickly, so we didn't really miss a whole lot.
Oh, good.
They were really good with reimbursing us the accommodation fees that for the semester we weren't there, and ultimately they said they're not, if you didn't want to go back onto campus for the next year, so for my last year, then we wouldn't have to. We could continue to do it online. They were very transparent with, to begin with, it will be online, as we're doing as best we can, but it probably will be online for most of the year. As time went on, because I chose to go back up, and my friend I was living with did bioscience, so she was having to do dissections over Teams, or watch dissections over Teams, rather.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And she was doing that for probably halfway through autumn, beginning of winter. And then the uni emailed us and said, what we're going to do is the courses that can be done online will be done online. If they have to be in person, then they were the only ones that will be in person. And I'd already said to her, if my course can be done entirely online, which it could, I would much rather have all of that and she gets the lectures in person that she needs. Because me being in person, yes, it would have been better, but I was still getting just as much out of it doing it through my laptop. There's only so much you can do with dissections and whatnot. Through Teams. Yeah, I got to see some of it because I'd go and sit in and watch, but she got a lot more out of being on site.
Yeah.
So I think I got quite lucky in that I didn't need a whole lot of practical, and face-to-face could be done online. We adapted to it. But I had to keep juggling between what the rules were here and what the rules were in Wales, because they were slightly different. We had quite a few circuit breakers where we couldn't go out for 2 weeks at a time. There was a lot more preparation. I think it was a lot clearer from what I'd gathered. We knew about things in advance and what they were planning on doing, compared to down here. It seemed to be a lot more last minute. But I do appreciate that I had at least half of my uni experience traditionally, because my best friend started 2 years after me, pretty much in the middle of the pandemic, and she stuck it through. She said it was entirely different. She didn't have a normal uni experience at all. So I'm very grateful for the year that I did get.
Yeah, and hopefully Alex will get, he's doing a 4-year course because he's doing a year in industry. Hopefully he'll get the same, that full experience. And I was just sitting here listening to Ellie thinking, although we said about this one particular tutor, that wasn't, the atmosphere at Aberystwyth.
He was the exception.
I wouldn't want that to be the message people remember, because going back to, I remember why we spoke about epilepsy, why I was speaking about epilepsy now, is because, as I say, they were the first university when Ellie was applying for unis that were completely on it. What can we do to help you? What
really?
How can we reassure you? How can we reassure your parents? Because obviously these people are adults and they don't have to let the parents know things like this. And as long, Ellie said, yeah, that's fine. Let my parents know if there's an issue. They have been brilliant, and Alex really didn't want to go anywhere else. They have such a lovely, I want to say pastoral kind of feel. They care for these youngsters, and they are youngsters. The majority of the people that go to uni are 18, and I think these days most 18-year-olds are coming straight out of home. I don't think there are going to be that many 18-year-olds who have lived away from home before they go. And yet some of the places that we went to visit very much got the feeling that, well, they're adults now.
Yeah, just left to it.
So, I wouldn't want that to be... Aberystwyth, I think, is a brilliant university. It was just an unfortunate experience.
Yeah. You're going to get that, aren't you, in every place that you go to. You're never going to get the same experience from every person that you meet in that establishment. You generally tend to get the odd person that you might have to remind of what you're entitled to and things like that.
That's the other thing, is our seminar group was fairly large, and this was 2 experiences out of however many that one lecturer taught. So it really would have been, we were the minority amongst the anomaly.
Yeah, I think it's just because now we know what we know. I mean, we thought it was bad enough at the time, even if, with anxiety, but it just hurts my heart.
Well, this is what I was going to say to you, Laura, because, as a mum, having to watch your child go through some challenges that you can't make better, you can't fix, you can't fix other people's ways that they treat Ellie and things like that. And it must be really, really hard. And I know, from my my experience with my daughter, and I was going to ask you about kind of dealing with meltdowns and shutdowns, because Gracie's had a handful of them, and they definitely were a lot worse in her teens. And I really struggled emotionally when she had a meltdown, because I couldn't fix it. I couldn't just make it better straight away. And she's not tactile at all. She doesn't like to be hugged. She doesn't like that closeness, no touch. Yeah. So my instinct as a parent, or as a person really, if someone's upset, I give them a hug. I'm very tactile. We're very opposite in that. So I found it incredibly hard emotionally for me when she's having a meltdown and I can't hug her. I can't make it better. I can't fix it. And when she's kind of in the throes of it, she doesn't see logic. She doesn't see reason. She's just overwhelmed. And I have to wait for her to come down before we then have a conversation. And I remember this one time that we were driving home from somewhere, and she'd literally spent the whole day masking and trying to like get by, and she got in the car and just relaxed, but there had been an altercation where she had been, and she just completely overwhelmed, had a meltdown. I couldn't console her the whole drive home. She was really, really upset. We came home and she just took herself upstairs into a room. She just needed the time to come down from it by herself. And I'm sitting on the sofa crying, because I was like, I just want to be with her, but she doesn't want me with her. And how can I fix this? And I was overwhelmed by it. Then she comes skipping down the stairs and she's like, right, I've thought about it, and she kind of got herself through it and over it. And then she was like, right, now that I've thought about it, I can see this person's point of view on this, this, and this. And she's like, what's for dinner? And I'm sitting there like losing my mind, trying. It took me hours to get over it. And the rest of the evening, I was really out of sorts, because I just felt really, I can't even describe the feeling, but I felt really just out of it and uneasy. And I went to bed that night and I was just like, I'm exhausted. And it wasn't even me that had the meltdown. Do you ever experience that?
Yes. Oh, if people could see how I was nodding then, one of my working parts of my body. Yeah. It's and then on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, there's this guilt that you're thinking, but it's not about me, but it can be exhausting, because your mind's racing, thinking exactly what happened, how can I fix it, how can I make it right? I can't make it right, I can't do anything, I just have to sit it out, but I didn't know this all those years, or times that Ellie was away at uni. We were getting these messages, or we were getting video calls and this, and we can't fix it because A, we're 200 miles away, and B, I don't know how to fix it. It could have been what I would have explained to her. I said, it just sounds like a misunderstanding to me, and I wasn't getting why she didn't see this. No, that's not what they meant. But surely that's a joke, Ellie. Don't you see? It wasn't a joke, but it was, Ellie. They didn't mean it this way. Now we know why. I'm able to take a step back, and we're also, I think, between the two of us, we've discussed, haven't we? Now that we can just ask, because I lived in a house when I was little where we did walk on eggshells, and it wasn't until it was just the three of us in the end, where my mum and my brother and I moved out and got our own place, where we were able eventually to just sort of sing along to the radio and laugh and joke when we were wiping up the dishes. It was it was very oppressive and what have you before then. Then my mum met my stepdad, and he's just a brilliant man. But that feeling where your stomach knots and you're walking on eggshells, and I remember when I first met Gary, I said to him, I can't ever live in a house like that again. I won't have it.
Yeah.
I've spoken to Ellie about this openly, so it's not. Hopefully you remembered it. It's not a surprise. And I was beginning to feel this because we didn't understand, and I was beginning to feel that every little thing I said or did was wrong.
Right.
And Ellie was getting frustrated by it, or irritated by it, or cross.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this isn't right. I've got this feeling back that I've not had since I was a child. And then, of course, the diagnosis comes through, and I think, okay, so we've got this. So we start learning, and researching and trying to do our best for Ellie. And Ellie's learning as well at the same time.
Yeah.
And we had this conversation where I said, I have this feeling, and what I know now is that's my trauma. That's not Ellie's trauma. That's my trauma from my childhood, and it's not fair to inflict that on Ellie. So I have to deal with that. But I wanted to be honest in letting her know how I was feeling, so that we could then say, right, if we're just completely open and honest with what we say to each other, then we'll know where we stand. So I think we're pretty much reached a point, haven't we, where Ellie will come down, her expression on her face perhaps isn't displaying what she's actually feeling, but I don't know that. And so I will say to her, "You okay? Are you cross?" Or she'll say something to me and I hear it in what feels to me quite a sharp tone. And I say, "Are you cross with me?" And she'll, "No, I was just making a point." And so we've kind of beginning to find our way. It's taken a few months to get to this point, but I would feel quite affronted that I might perhaps I had misheard because I've got a bit of a dodgy right ear. And then Ellie would repeat it, but the way she repeated it and the way I received it was that she was cross at having to repeat it.
Yeah.
But so now I say, "Are you cross?" And she, because I can't hear, and she'll say, "No, I was just making the point."
Yeah, for me, sometimes it feels like whenever I repeat myself, I'm just trying to articulate more, but then trying to be more articulate after being told, because I don't realise at the time, it comes across as snappy or irritable, whereas I'm really just trying to enunciate more.
So we're at that point. So it is easier because I can say, if the meltdowns, I mean, there was one classic meltdown where I think actually, was it a meltdown or shutdown? It was a shutdown actually. And this was again pre-diagnosis. We bought one of these kind of like a ready meal that comes in a box or a bag, and it's put the rice in at 5 minutes, and after 5 minutes put the whatever in, and then do this and do that.
Ellie's laughing already
because I know exactly what it was. I could also tell you exactly how long you put it in the microwave for.
And it was in the oven, I think. And we brought it into the kitchen. I get a lot of fatigue, with my various autoimmune conditions and whatnot. And I don't tend to do a lot of the cooking, and if I do, it's fairly simple stuff because I can't chop and peel, etc. I was just thinking at any time that we've been away on a retreat, I don't think I've ever cooked for anybody. I think the best I can do for people is make cups of coffee for them. But anyway,
valuable skill that.
Well, it keeps us all writing, doesn't it? But
exactly.
We came home, and I thought it's not too much to ask Ellie, who probably at that point was 19, 20, something like that.
I think it was a pre-pandemic.
So maybe 18, 19, home from university for whatever reason. And I said, "Ellie, please, could you do this? We're exhausted. Could you just, it's quite silly, you put the oven on, put these in." And she came out into the kitchen and it went deathly silent. No movement, no nothing. And after a while, I think, did I come out or your dad came out? Well, you don't remember. One of us, and Ellie was sitting on the floor up against the kitchen cupboard, absolutely just out of it. And I tried speaking to her, and she couldn't respond. She went non-verbal. I don't know if that's the correct use of that term or not, but at that moment when she has the shutdown, she can't speak. And I'm saying, it was me actually, and I'm saying, what's going on? What's the problem? And she just, all she could do was shake her head, and I'm thinking, all we've done is ask you to do this simple task. What is the problem? Well, now we know it's not a problem. It's who Ellie is, and it's a condition. I think you prefer to call it a condition. Some people prefer to call it disorder. Some people prefer to call it condition. But we just did not know, and I felt frustrated. Ellie was in complete, overwhelm and had shut down. And sometimes at that point, it was probably going through my head as well because I've thought it in the past. Is this leading to a seizure?
Yeah.
Is this something that's going to lead to a seizure? Because I don't know, because generally Ellie doesn't get any we shouldn't get any warnings. She just have one. And it's little things like that. I can't remember why I'm telling you this story, but anyway, yes. So I couldn't help her with this shutdown. I wasn't able to. I didn't know how to. And every time I spoke to her, it made it worse.
Yeah.
Whereas now we say, okay.
It's because what it is it's another. With that particular point in time, I think there were 6 or 7 different components. And I couldn't compute all of that. And then every other bit of information I was being fed was just one more thing that was just being thrown in there that I had to try and work out, and I couldn't straighten it out. And then more recently, there have been 2 occasions where I've been away, and I've been 2 different friends, and they've been absolutely wonderful, where they both had to deal with either a meltdown or a shutdown. And one of them was when I was up in London, and I think I phoned you and then couldn't speak on the phone and just handed it over to my friend, and she explained everything. And this was the first time she'd ever seen any of it, the first time she'd had to deal with it.
First time she's spoken to me. I didn't even know who she was.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I have a lot of respect for her for just stepping up in that moment and being someone that I can trust with that, because it's a scary thing as well, being away from what you're familiar with and not knowing how other people are going to react.
Yeah.
Especially because I know that I wouldn't have been able to properly look after myself. She got me out of the building across the road where it was quieter and where I could calm down. And then my other friend, this was when we were away in September. It was just in the middle of Disney, in the middle of Hollywood Studios. I had a meltdown. And she got me out of the park and back to the hotel. And it was even down to the little things I don't really remember leaving the park because I was so in my own head, but I remember like she asked me if it was too bright, and it was, and she couldn't find my sunglasses. She got out hers. And I remember both of them feeling so looked after and so calm. It was a lot easier to calm down afterwards because I knew that I was safe.
Yeah.
I've not really had meltdowns like that when I've been at home because I've been able to go upstairs or just somewhere quiet. And you've never really been around when I've had, there's only been a couple of times I've had them in public places. But having the support system, both from here and then how they've dealt with it as well.
It seems actually that the younger generation are more adept than I am at giving the right support.
I think a lot of it is just winging it. We're all just learning as we go along.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, there's a lot more discussion around conditions like this now, isn't there? And, you know, everyone, like I say, you're learning as you go along, but it is discussed a lot more, and it's discussed a lot more openly, and it's on social media. So it's reaching that demographic of people as well. So, you know, the people that you surround yourself with, they're all going to be aware of it, not only because they know that you deal with challenges with it, but also they might see online. There's documentaries about it now. So there are a lot of ways to get information about this. I'm not going to say all of them are reputable sources of information or true depictions of actual real lived experiences of the condition, but you know, the information is out there. And I think it's amazing that you've got such a good support network, not only at home with your family, but also within the circle of friends that you have. And I know you touched upon earlier that you have some friends that also have been diagnosed. So does that help in kind of, you know, that they get it because they have it?
Oh, completely. That was where I was talking to one of them. This was probably about this time last year, and I'd spoken to them about the fact I was going through a diagnosis, and they were actually the one that said it's imposter syndrome, isn't it? Because they were only diagnosed a year, 2 years, somewhere on that before me. And I couldn't put a name to it at all. I was trying to explain why I was so nervous to bring it up to them. And I eventually I sort of phrased it as like I feel like I was encroaching on their space. As you're feeling imposter syndrome, that's what it is. And they dealt with the same thing. And so having someone else I can talk to that is also late diagnosed, and we're both sort of realizing things together. We were chatting the other day about growing up and sort of saying, how did we not see something sooner? What is so obvious to us now? But it's hindsight's 2020. And the other thing we say is that like attracts like. I have a lot of neurodivergent friends, and there's kind of that thing where I was like, right, who's going to be the next one? Who's going to be the next person we find, or who's going to be the next person that ends up with a diagnosis? But you all look out for each other because you have that level of mutual understanding. And I think the other thing with friends is they can poke and prod and a little bit more than family can. They're not holding back as much. But whereas you might be more hesitant to try something because you don't know. My friends will kind of just give it a go, and they're very much like, you know what, if it goes wrong, we'll deal with that when we come to it. They're not afraid to, if it works, it's great. If it doesn't, then we'll figure it out next time. Whereas I think you and Dad are probably a little bit more hesitant because you don't want to take the risks.
Yeah, she'll have flesh and blood.
Alex isn't fussed. He'll do whatever he needs to do.
Alex is very pragmatic. I don't know quite where he came from. he's just so...
He's the imposter.
he's just so calm and just deals with it. I remember when I broke my arm a few years ago. I was out and I'd fallen, and my neighbour happened to be there, and he brought me home, and the children were in, you know, it's about 3-4 years ago, so they were not young people. And the pair of them just 14. Took me into the kitchen. They got the medical box out. They got some water and cotton wool. They cleaned me up, and I was, you know, it was, and I couldn't move my arm. And I said, I think I've broken it. And Alex said, yeah, I think you have, Mum. You've got to go to the hospital. And at which point Gary was on his way home. He came home. We went up, and it was broken. But it was so funny to see them go into action, you know, because they just did what we would do to them when they were children, you know, when they'd fallen off their bike or off a scooter, and you sit them in the kitchen and you dab them clean and you patch them up. But I just remember you were very much getting the stuff for Alex, and Alex was administering, and he's sort of nearly 5 years younger. But, you know, I laugh now when he says after that, you know, we learned that he wanted to study to become a physiotherapist. You know, he's been surrounded with disability in his life, and he said he wants to be the person that when medication can no longer help, he wants to be the person that can come and help. You know? But the pair of them just went into action, you know, and fixed me up until Gary got there, and then I was whisked off to the hospital and put in plaster again.
And then because you were up at the hospital, what you didn't see as well is, so this was in the evening, and I was very much like, okay, well, it's just me and him in the house. It's just me and Alex. We need to eat. Alex came downstairs. He went, Ellie, can I have hot dogs? So whatever, fine. This is like, okay, it's your big sister, you can kind of get away with pretty much anything. Though to him, he, like, this is the sort of thing I would tell you afterwards, but he would never know that I would tell you.
No.
And then he was like, oh, I'll do it. And so you at 14, 15, you just administered first aid to you. You'd gone off to the hospital and you went, right, we're having this for tea. This time do it. You go and wait in there. And you came in afterwards. I mean, it with just a plate of, I think, 8 or 9 hot dogs all cut in half. But
see, when he was first born, I remember my mum saying, there's got an old soul in him. She saw something, he lifted his head on the morning he was born and pulled the mask off the nurse in the operating theatre because he was
Really?
And they said he's been here before. And my mum sort of, as she got to know him, said, yeah, there's an old soul in there.
Uh-huh.
And he's just quite this practical nature, I guess. And he was home. It was lovely. We had him home for quite a long time over Christmas. And then it's his birthday as well, only in the beginning of January. So he was home for that. And if Gary and I were out, because cooking isn't something Ellie can really deal with, other than your simple sort of, I say simple.
Shove it in the oven and be done with it.
Yeah, microwave, hot noodles, this kind of thing. We'd come back from wherever we'd been, and he'd been in and he'd cooked your bacon and eggs. And I know none of that is difficult, particularly for a neurotypical person, which we believe he is. But it's just the way he just got on with it. And he was, I'll do that. I'll put that in. For a boy who lives on tuna mayo sandwiches most of the time, he did pretty well when he got home, and to make sure his sister was fed adequately.
There's nothing other than pure intentions behind it as well. And sometimes it's, so when he came down, he was going to cook for himself and I was down here and he went, I'll do some for you as well. Mm-hmm. And it's really nothing other than, I'm doing this, we both need to eat.
Yeah, he would do it for me, actually. Yeah, I'd be sitting in the living room thinking, I just can't even turn the TV over on the remote. I'm so fatigued. And at this point, we didn't understand about the autism and that cooking is not a skill that Ellie copes with. And Gary would be working, so I'd just be sitting there thinking, well, I'm just going to go hungry then because I can't do anything. And then suddenly this young lad would pop down, it's downstairs, said, right, I'm going to put the oven on, Mum. I'm going to have some chicken dippers. Can I put something in for you? And I know it's only another meal, but you feel really loved, don't you?
Yeah. It sounds like you've got a good little team dynamic going on, and that everyone just looks out for one another, which is what family is about, isn't it?
I think so. I think we're very lucky. Yeah, we are very lucky. Ellie was looking after me this week. I had a lot of life admin and paperwork to do, so I was supplied with a cup of soups, and ramen in a pot, sort of boiled kettle.
I thought you said rum.
Rum
in a pot.
Well, now then, that's something we could discuss.
I'll come round if that's what she's providing.
Yeah, sadly non-drinker, Ellie. Yeah, non-drinker, but but yeah, it's the whole thing has been a journey. I mean, it's been a journey for Alex as well. He's learning. Why was Eleanor cross, or why is this happening, or why is that? Now, again, as we say, we're learning and we're beginning to understand why.
Yeah.
And even if we don't understand, then we accept.
Well, he said a couple of weeks ago, before he went back to uni, he came down and he went, and I'd recounted something to him. He said, right, well, before you say anything, before you do anything, are you sure that's how they meant it? Because he knew those people as well. He went, are you sure they didn't mean it like this? I was like, logically, I know that he's correct. And I said to him, I shouldn't respond anyway because I'm feeling very emotional about it by now. But having him point that out to me, I was kind of like, especially if he's coming down and saying something, because he doesn't really come out with things like that unless he wholeheartedly stands behind it.
Yeah. And then he goes off on one.
Yeah.
It's very funny like that. He's so quiet. And then all of a sudden you hear from him and you think, crikey, he's been holding on to that one for a while,
It's been stewing.
It comes out. Yeah.
So
but yeah, he's learning as well, isn't he? Bless him. He's just trying to help in the best way because, again, tone or inference isn't always Ellie's strength. I mean, the funny thing there was, he was in about year 8, wasn't it? He was sent off for inference training at school. So clearly worked, didn't it, for him? He's coming down and saying to Ellie, I'm not sure that's what they meant, Ellie.
Yeah.
And he's got no problem asking me either, has he? It's like, or telling me if I've taken something in a way that he didn't. It's really hard for me sometimes to tell with Alex. It's really difficult, more than most other people, because I also don't always know if he's actively trying to wind me up. So I have to work out whether he's trying to wind me up, whether he's being serious, and then did he mean for it to sound the way it sounded, or have I heard it in a way that's different? It's this whole
sounds exhausting.
I was just going to say, Lucy, doesn't it? You can see how it's exhausting and how you have autistic burnout, and autistic fatigue, and and goodness knows, because I don't think you display any ADHD, do you? You're not. It was ASD. I mean, crikey, I don't know quite how we would manage. if this little bullet running around the house as well. I
It's,
don't know. I
yeah,
mean,
it's
amazing for
hectic.
parents that are supporting family with multiple conditions. Kudos.
I think
And coffee.
we all just do lots of coffee. Yes,
Yeah.
lots of coffee, lots of caffeine, Coca-Cola. I have to keep away from her because she already takes medication which is full of caffeine, which is what the ADHD medication is. They said it's equivalent to 5 shots of caffeine per tablet that she takes.
So how does that work then? Because obviously we think of caffeine as a stimulant.
Yeah, no, I can't remember the science behind it. It made sense, I remember when they told me, because it's to do with the dopamine levels, and that people with ADHD have a deficiency in dopamine. So it's to get that dopamine surge. The caffeine activates the parts of the brain that make you focus. So rather than it being kind of lax and your focus being here, there, and everywhere, and your attention kind of going, the caffeine affects that part of the brain, I believe, and kind of intensifies that focus to draw it down. But there's more science behind it. That's probably not the best explanation, but I just remember the paediatrician saying you can't have energy drinks. You want to limit the amount of caffeine. Don't drink kind of tea, coffee, Coke, and things like that, because you're already getting the equivalent of five shots of caffeine with every tablet. So and she was on like a double dose of it. So yeah, we stay away from things. Although ironically, she has kind of had the odd energy drink. Impulsivity is one of her things, and she's like, I wanted one, so I had it. And it actually has the opposite effects. Like, it doesn't affect her at all. She doesn't get hyper or anything on it. She's like, this does nothing. I was like, it's because you're used to 5 shots of caffeine in one go.
Yeah, it's too low for her. Yeah, Ellie has to avoid caffeine because of the epilepsy, but I couldn't tell you the science behind that either. But she can't take the paracetamol with the added caffeine in them.
Caffeine,
But how does that work then? If I mean, does Gracie have the hyper focus from autism then? So
yes, definitely.
Oh my goodness! I mean, how does that?
Yeah. That's what I mean. It's just conflicting all the time. It will change day to day depending on the kind of the external environment that she's in. But yeah, she gets her hyperfixations and hyperfocus, very much so. She can work incredibly fast and incredibly in depth on kind of project type things. The whole thing of wanting to be a paramedic and be part of the NHS. Like, when she sees an ambulance, like, she gets a very physical response. She's like, I can't keep, like, she fizzes with excitement when she sees an ambulance, because she's like, that's my passion, that's my people. But yeah, she very much gets that. But then she'll have episodes where you can't focus her in on anything, and you can see just looking at her that her brain is firing in all directions all at the same time. She won't be able to sit and concentrate on anything. She gets fidgety. She'll be sitting on the sofa, then she'll be upside down on it, then she'll be sitting on the floor, then she'll be doing cartwheels, then she'll be doing a handstand while watching TV, just like constant movement. And even when she's sitting still, she does the leg bounce, so the legs going up and down constantly. She's never still, and sometimes that's physically, and all the time that's mentally. You can see her brain is just constantly going, and that's one of the reasons why she's at the moment saying that she kind of doesn't want to stay on the medication, because the medication quietens your brain, it focuses you, it stops it firing in so many different directions. And she's like, I don't like the quiet, because she's so used to the constant buzz, and she doesn't like the quiet. Which, looking online, and we follow lots of people on different social medias and TikToks and things like that, people that are sharing their experiences of stuff like this. And that's quite a common thing for when they go on medication. And they say, actually, it's really unnerving, because they're so used to this constant buzz. And then when everything kind of essentially goes quiet and still, and their brain kind of pinpoints and starts to focus, they're not used to it, because they've spent their whole lives, especially if it's a late diagnosis, you spent your whole lives with your brain working in a certain way. So yeah, I can imagine
it must feel like a piece of you's been taken away.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Because that's what you've lived with. You know, I wouldn't wish my rheumatoid on anybody. You know, it's not pleasant. And when you get people look at you thinking, why have you got the blue badge and this kind of thing? Because you can stand up, and you think, well, it's more to it than that. I would, if you want my blue badge and I can have your perfect health, I would swap it. You know, if I could click my fingers, I'd swap it in that time. you know?
Yeah.
But I've grown up with rheumatoid, and everything I do, no, that's not right. I was going to say everything I do is informed by it. It's not, but I have to take it into account.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
what sort of a different person would I be if I'd not had it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, I guess when the meds are taking away that constant buzz in your head and that constant, I don't know, information and energy, I guess it must be quite difficult to come to terms with it.
Yeah, because when we first started, the original dose didn't really affect her at all, and she was like, "This isn't working. I'm not feeling any different." So they increased the dose, and then she was like, "This is weird." And the way she describes it, she's like, "I feel boring because I'm just there, and I'm like, I'm doing this task, and then I'm doing that task, and then when I've done this task, I move to like when she's at work." And she's like, I'm used to it being like, right, and this, and this, and this, and what am I having for dinner, and what am I doing over here, and after work I'm doing this, and she's used to that busyness in her brain because she still functioned when she wasn't having the medication. She still functioned. She still got everything done. She's just on the outside, she just looks a bit frantic about it, but that's normal to her. That's just how she works. So when that was taken down, it feels alien to her, and she's like, she almost can't concentrate because it's so quiet. Because I mean, she and I are very different. When I work, I need silence. I can't have distraction. I can't have noise. I can't have music. I can't have TV on. I need silence because I need to focus. She's the opposite. If it's silent, she can't focus. She has music playing or the TV on in the background. Are you the same?
Yeah, I have to have music on. I absolutely hate sitting in silence. I need something else. If I stop focusing on what I'm focusing on, that I can immediately focus on instead of being hyper aware of how quiet it is, because that in and of itself is really jarring. Sometimes I need everything to just stop and I need it to be quiet. But pretty much every time I'm doing something, I will have music playing or I have a video on in the background as a secondary focus. And I'll keep up with it as well. I can have videos on in the background while I'm doing something and still be completely aware of what I'm watching.
It's a skill. You're very clever. I can't do that.
Well, so there must be, you know, we're thinking, you know, when we look at Ellie's strengths, of which, you know, I think she has many, got that eye for detail. And I remember her gran, my mum, saying when Ellie was quite tiny, saying Ellie would make a great continuity, continuity officer, you know, but the person who works in TV who will look at a scene and then when they film, they go back and say, actually, that wasn't there, that was there, and this, you know, so for continuity. My mum said that when Ellie was no more than 6 at the most, you know, and I think, what did my mum know? Because I remember my mum also saying to me, watch that one, she's quiet, she's a quiet little one, and she probably needs more than she's asking for. You know, whereas Alex, if he wanted a kiss, he was like, you know, and you're like, it was suck into your face like a limpet.
I think to take it quite literally, on every single school report I had growing up, there was always a comment, she needs to put her hand up when she needs help. Every single school report, without fail, it said she needs to ask for help when she thinks that she needs help.
Yeah, or constantly, she needs to contribute more. You know, she knows her stuff. She needs to speak up in class. Needs to put her hand. And I just said, but that's not who she is.
Yeah. Why does she need to? As long as she's
and again, that what we've learned is that's actually quite typical of females with autism. Quiet one that sits at the back, gets on with their work, doesn't want to put their hand up, doesn't want to be the centre of attention, doesn't want to read aloud, wants to read. And quite often she found it annoying when the teacher used to read out loud, because Ellie was always like pages
just let
ahead.
me read,
you know, just let me read, which I discovered only this week. Reading is a form of repetitive behaviour. In a lad, it would present as something else, but apparently in girls, reading and twiddling their hair could be considered, I don't know whether they would say it was stimming or repetitive behaviour, but it's this kind of repetitive behaviour that is now recognised.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's a track record. You look at my teachers and which ones I sort of would gravitate towards were the ones that wouldn't pick on me just because I didn't put my hand up, wouldn't expect me to speak up. They were very much like, we know you're going to say something if you feel like you have something to contribute, and the rest of it will be in my book if I didn't. And they're the ones that all throughout school, and I got very lucky to have one of them for 6 of the 7 years I was at secondary school, I felt so comfortable with. And that particular teacher, she was my English teacher, no one was volunteering to read out loud. I absolutely hated it. As it stood that day, I felt awful. I really didn't feel like I couldn't focus on the book in front of me at all. And they decided to do one of those Wheel of Fortunes with everyone in the class, and it picked out me. And I felt comfortable enough to say to her, I can't really focus. The words aren't making sense on the page. I feel like I'm about to fall asleep. I just did not slept at all the night before. And she had said, because she knew that whilst I didn't enjoy reading out loud, if I absolutely had to in her class, I would. And she had said to me that, you know what, for this lesson, that's absolutely fine. Everyone else in the class sort of protested, saying that I was just doing it to get out of it. I was like, I really actually feel like my head might just hit the table in a second.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments where I'm like, this is a teacher that I can trust absolutely through and through,
Yeah.
for just respecting who I was as a person, and knowing that she would come over and ask me quietly if I needed help. She very much took note of us individually, every single one of us in class, all 30 of us, and what we all needed. And that makes a difference, doesn't it? It was, I think, very visible.
Yeah.
It really did make a difference.
I think, I mean, you know, again, you know, kudos to teachers. I have one of my closest friends is a teacher, and the amount of work they put into lessons outside of their working hours is tremendous. In fact, Gary just recently has just become helping out at the college as an IT expert.
Oh, okay.
Because he's an IT engineer, my husband, and he's doing a couple of days a week, and he's really enjoying it. But he said it's the amount of preparation and the work that he has to do that he wouldn't be paid for, you know, outside those hours. And I think that's the same for a lot of teachers.
They're incredible. Like my ethics teacher, we didn't get enough textbooks sent to us in year 12. They sent, I think, half the number they should have sent, and she went and photocopied the missing chapters, or however it worked out, for everyone, so that everyone had the same material. And that took her hours. She had to pay for her own paper. And what she said to us at the end of year 13 was she will buy those textbooks back off us for a couple of £1 each. And we all agreed between us quietly, it was like, we'll just give them back to you. We don't, not that we need them, but also we're not going to make you pay for your resources back that you already put so much of your own time and money into. This is the least we can do for you. And it's when teachers really go, I think, above and beyond. They put in so much work anyway that there's a lot to commend them for, because it's, I think, so much more than actually just delivering a lesson.
Have you found that's the same with homeschooling?
What's that in terms of people's opinions on teachers?
Well, I mean, how far down the line with Gracie did you go? Were you tutoring or?
So she was deregistered from school when she was 14. So she had just started year 9. So she had been in mainstream right up until year 9. She spent year 8 and the beginning of year 9 homeschooling because of the pandemic. And then she went back very briefly after the pandemic and then deregistered her. But for us, so the mainstream system wasn't working for her. We knew that. We knew there were various different challenges that we weren't able to overcome. We tried different schools, so in case it was just the school that didn't fit, but it was the system that wasn't fitting. And so I thought full-time home education was going to be the answer, because she thrived so much in homeschooling through the pandemic. And so we did it for like 18 months, and she really struggled with that because it was just me and her, and it's inside the same 4 walls every day. I mean, obviously we went out to places, but you know, this is her home. And she climbs the wall. This is why she couldn't do an office job. Like, this is why being a paramedic is, she's out on the road every day. It's a perfect job for her. But yeah, so she really struggled. Also, I don't know if you'll be able to identify with this, Ellie, but also she really struggled with the fact that she's very academic and she's very competitive. So working in a classroom, she was like, I need to be the best at this. I need to get the highest grade. I need to do this. So then when we were working at home, just 2 of us, she's like, oh, don't need to try because it's just me, and she was just doing the bare minimum, and I was like, where's that drive come from? And she's like, I need people around me to push me for that drive to just try, otherwise it's just boring. So we ended up putting in, she went to 14 to 16 provision at college for her academic studies for 16 hours a week, and then the rest of the time she was home educated at home with me. So at college she was doing her GCSE academics subjects, and then at home we were focusing on employability skills and life skills, the things that I felt were missing from the mainstream school system. So that balance worked a lot better for us, because she was out of the house for a period of time in a classroom environment, but the classrooms were a lot smaller because it was alternative provision, so it wasn't school. So the classrooms were a lot smaller, and her teachers very quickly realised that she worked super fast. So they would give her work, set her work, and she'd sit in a table in the corner and do her work, and then the rest of the class would be taught at the same time, and then she'd give in her work and they'd give her something else. So she kind of had a one-to-one thing going on. But that worked for her because she was able to, and she got really hyper focused during her lessons. She would go and sit in the library and get all of her work done, and then come home, and then we would approach education in a different way, in a more kind of practical way, focusing in on things that she would be able to use going into her first job and going into society. So we had to trial and error a few different things in terms of the best way that she learns, and it took us a little while to find it, and I wish that I'd tried to find that way sooner, but you know, all these things happen the way that they do.
I'm just thinking, as you're speaking about that, I didn't even know that kind of provision existed. It's not something that perhaps I didn't go looking for it, but it certainly hasn't hit me in the face either. You know, like, I don't know, over 50 funeral plans, you know, care plans and things like that. It just, I didn't know it was out there. And I had no idea you could do a mixture.
Yeah, I mean, there are more options than that. That you've got lots of different options in terms of education when it comes to young people, and that's part of my plight with the studying that I'm doing, with the research that I do, with Recap. It's making people aware that actually school isn't the only option. There are other options that you can explore that might fit your family better, legal options that might fit better, but you can't try them if you don't know about them.
I'm so glad you clarified that.
I'm not saying I'm not saying anything illegal. This is all allowed in the UK anyway, not in other countries. You can't do homemade in some of the other countries, but yeah, it's just knowledge is power, as they say, isn't it? And if you don't know about it, you can't access it. And there are a lot of families out there not accessing things and struggling through and having their children incredibly stressed and overwhelmed and upset, and it could be avoided, it could be supported, but they just don't know about it. But that's a whole other story. Just before we finish today, we can't finish without mentioning that you're an author, Laura. We have to mention the fact that you are incredibly talented and you like to pen stories, which is amazing. And you've approached some really important topics in your books as well. I love that you don't shy away from actually real life stories, real life challenges, and that. What drives you to write about things that are so raw and real?
So I've thought about this. I used to think it's because I'm a big Jodie Picoult fan.
Yeah.
She picks on the big issues, and I heard her in an interview once say that, you know, if it moves her, she needs to write about it. And there is some of that in me. I also think there's a little part of me that when I was younger, I wanted to be a child psychologist, but I didn't get I'm this old, I didn't get my maths O level. And because I didn't get a maths O level, I wasn't allowed to go on and study.
Oh.
You know, I went and got my 3A levels and whatnot. They weren't great, but I got them. And then I decided not to go on to university because I got myself a summer job. But when I look back at all the various jobs I've done, there's always been this element of human connection in them. Even, I mean, the job I did for the longest time was a claims assessor for an insurance company. And it would be going to people's homes after they'd had a claim, which could have been something as, I say, simple as water damage, but that can do a lot of damage and it can destroy sentimental things, to fires, to burglaries. And I saw some horrendous things in my 10 years as an assessor. And I remember, and my job was to go in and, you know, look at the damage, assess whether it had really happened, and then come, and if it had, gather the evidence and come to a settlement. People would always say to me, they were expecting somebody really, I guess, hard. Somebody once said, "Oh, I thought you were going to be a monster," you know, because there's this image, isn't there, that you're going to come in and try and knock them down and their money and everything. But I always used to think if they're honest, that could be my mum, my nan. Why am I not going to give them the honest settlement? And the amount of stories people would then open up because you're in their house, you know, and they've had this potentially traumatic event happen to them, and they start to open up and you start to hear all these stories and things. And I think that's what kept me in that job for that length of time, because I didn't really enjoy all the driving, and I did a lot of driving. That's ultimately why I gave up, because it was affecting my rheumatoid. But people would open up with their stories, and people are just so interesting, and families and the dynamics within families. And I think it's all just come together in this I wanted to learn about people and what drives them and what splits them apart. And why do they do this? And why is this happening? And I think to a certain extent as well, I can live vicariously, because there are things in my life I've never been able to do because of the rheumatoid, you know, and you can research it and you can give that to your character and you can sort of live the moment as much as if you're the reader. So yeah, and the children would come home with stories about, oh, not stories, but they would come and tell me something, and I think, well, that's interesting. And the more I went down the rabbit hole, the more I thought, this is quite big. This is something that needs to be publicized in a way, So when I write, ultimately, what I want to entertain, but I'd like to think I'm writing stories that can start conversations in the same way that I would watch Grange Hill, or we would watch EastEnders as a family, and there would be problem or an issue, and it allowed the viewers at home to start talking about that thing, but in the context of the storyline, even though it might actually be happening to them.
Yeah.
And so does that make sense? So, if it can start a conversation and people feel that they are able to just start talking about that safely, then I think, that's great. And that's the sort of thing, I've had a look at child attachment disorder and self-harming and survivor's guilt.
Yes.
Things like this, I think if you can get people talking about these things, if they want to open up, it gives them a channel.
It's like in nurseries where you can use something called a persona doll. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, and they're basically a doll, but the practitioner will use the doll as a medium of starting a conversation. So when you're talking about important topics, rather than kind of approach it directly with the children, so they might feel a bit like, oh God, I don't want to talk about this because this is too linked to me or anything like that. It's happening to the doll. So how do you think so and so feels about this situation? And so and so is really sad because this has happened to them. What can we do to help them? So it gets them talking about it, but thinking about it in kind of a third person, so it's not so close to them. And that it sounds a bit similar to what you're saying, as having that kind of medium to approach difficult subjects a bit removed from yourself.
Yeah, and if I don't want to sound pompous or whatever about it, but if it helps one person, then great. Yeah. If it helps one person to come out and say, I need help with this, or I get that. That's great. I've just been incredibly slow with the newest one, but this is I've gone less dramatic this one, and just writing a very much a love story, which in itself has been quite an eye opener and taken me on my own journey. But I've got to finish it. The never-ending novel.
Where can people buy your books if they're interested in having a look for them?
Well, that is an interesting question, Lucy, because I've actually got my rights back at the moment, so you would still see my mug up on the Amazon and places like this, but at the moment, as part of my business plan, because writing is a business.
Of course.
I didn't have many points in my writing plan, but it was to raise my profile, to get my rights back, and then to get an agent. So 5 years organising the industry awards for the Romantic Novelists Association. I didn't do it for that purpose. I did it because I love the organisation and I love the buzz of the awards and being able to say thank you to all those professionals that get our books out there. But yes, I know, by sight and I can stop and chat to people now, and I don't feel anxious about it because I don't necessarily have to pitch to them. So I've done that. I've got my rights back. That was no problem whatsoever. Next thing is to finish the never-ending novel. What I'm hoping to do is to get the bundle then, the 3 existing plus the new one, and hopefully hook an agent. So yes, not earning any money with it currently, but
it really is a kind of watch this space, isn't it, at the minute?
Yes, and I have my social media whiz next to me here. So part of Ellie's business that she's trying to get going, because finding a job elsewhere is proving tricky. Is looking to take over the social media and run different things and book talk and things like that. And she's come up with a few ideas of what to do to market the books and things like that.
Brilliant.
So it's been finding the time, isn't it? Because a lot of life has to come first. And the thing with that is that started because traditional jobs weren't working out in the long term for me. So I could basically figure, let's try and find something that I enjoy doing that I can do and make that work for myself.
Yeah, play to your strengths.
Yeah. And I was always that child, like when you were writing Follow Me, however old I was at the time, somewhere on my laptop I've got a PowerPoint of what I thought that the fictional social media site that Mum came up with would look like. And I did that for fun. I was the child that would go on Canva and make graphics for fun.
Yeah.
And so it's not it doesn't feel like work when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I genuinely enjoy it so much that...
Which, by the way, is good because I can't afford to pay currently.
I enjoy that level of detail as well that goes into the post-production of it, and getting to be that meticulous, because
Brilliant.
it's colourful, it's creative, and it's helping other people as well. That's the other thing, is it's helping other people achieve what they want to do.
Until Ellie writes that musical, that, you know, piece of musical theatre that she's going to win awards for, you know.
Watch this space for both of you then. Brilliant. So just to finish off, because Recap is all about embracing everyone and making everyone feel at home and part of a supportive community, I ask all guests to have a think of one piece of advice or an empowering message to give to the listeners to help share the love and support. So this is to both of you. So if you could say one thing just to help even just one person, what would you like to say?
I think from where I'm coming from this is, it doesn't really matter how old you are. If you think that it's worth looking into a diagnosis, then go for it. You're going to find the good people that will stick by you, and it's better to live as yourself and have maybe a smaller group of people that really do have your back than exhaust yourself day in, day out to try and fit in. And one of the things that's stuck with me since I was little is the Peter Pan quote, "To live is an awfully big adventure." And it is, and a lot of that is living truthfully as yourself, because you will find your place. It might take a minute, but you will find where you belong, and you'll feel so much more comfortable for it.
Oh, Ellie, you make me want to cry.
Follow that one up.
I wish I'd gone first.
Over to you, Laura. No, you should have gone first. I might have to re-edit this. So
Yeah, no,
I am my mother's daughter.
I can't beat that. Well, I was thinking, I mean, there were lots of things I was thinking earlier, like, you know, I'm learning not to be so judgmental, and that's healthy for me, but that doesn't help others really. Well, it does, but I'm not judging them. But and the theme of what I am writing in the Never Ending Novel is basically, you know, what is normal? What is normal? Normal is what is normal to you, and I will fight anybody who says otherwise.
I agree with you.
As always, I think be kind. Just be kind, don't judge.
It's been amazing talking to you both. Thank you so much for giving your time today to share your stories. It's been fascinating hearing from the different perspectives. And Ellie, special thank you for really opening up and giving us an insight into your life, because it's so valuable, and you've taught me so many things as well on this. So thank you both. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you both millions of success in these Watch This Space sphere that we've got coming up. I'm excited to see where it goes. So definitely keep us informed.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us.
Not at all. Thank you. Take care.